You're listening to the Clutter Fairy Weekly, a weekly webcast and podcast brought to you by the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas. If you'd like to participate in one of our live webcasts, please visit cfhou.com/weekly. You'll find a calendar of upcoming webcasts, as well as instructions for joining the Zoom meeting via the app or by phone. We'd love to see you. That URL again is cfhou.com/weekly. Now here's the weekly episode. Enjoy.
Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for February 11th, 2025. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And we are streaming the webcast live on Facebook, we think. So you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by talking about last week's weekly tittle, which was called Major Events, Major Changes. The assignment was to think about major events in your life that can have an impact on your clutter landscape and how you could adjust to future change. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook who reflected on the bumps in the road of your decluttering journey this week. Please let us know in the comments. YouTube viewer CM shared a comment about another way our lives get cluttered up by major illness and how she shifted her behavior in response. CM writes, while taking care of my husband through 2 series of cancer treatments, there was one type of food gift basket he was gifted that made so much extra work for me. Fresh fruit baskets. Along with all my other work, I had to find time to chop up, find containers for storage, make room in the fridge, and then keep an eye on expired fruit, pineapples, oranges, mangoes, etc. And since my husband lost his appetite, he couldn't eat these anyway. Even giving this fresh fruit away was more work for me. So instead, I make it a point to take care of the caretaker. When my sister, who lived far away from me, had cancer, I made it a point to send her husband a gift card to his favorite sandwich chain so he could relax and take a break from taking care of my sister.
CM, I'm sure our audience can totally relate to what you're describing. Someone means well, and they want to support you during a difficult time, but they don't understand the logistics and the realities of dealing with somebody that's that gravely ill. So they accidentally made more work for you, which I'm sure wasn't their intention. That was definitely a bump in the road caused by a major life event. And your point is well taken that it's important to take care of the caregiver too. At least with a gift card to a sandwich shop, your brother-in-law didn't have anything to manage until he was ready to eat out. Another idea might be to fund a sitter to stay with the patient while the caregiver took a break. Whatever you decide to do to be helpful, I think it's important to ask up front what they might need so you don't accidentally add stress to their day. Thanks for sharing that bump in the road as an example. It was a very good one.
Let's see. Sorry, there were some tittle reports here. M says, the tittle confirmed for me that the clutter has collected because of the bumps in the road. I think healing the pain will help me declutter.
Absolutely. And actually, I have also found from working with clients that starting to declutter also helps heal the pain. Like there is a component of moving the stuff around also moves the emotions around as well. And so you get an emotional benefit from finally facing and dealing with the stuff that was a result of the major event happening. I have I've told this story before, but I had a client who is now passed away who had a whole bunch of health problems. And as a result, she was getting a lot of mail from medical institutions, doctors. You know how when you have a hospital stay, then like this avalanche of mail starts coming to you related to your hospital stay and the money that's being spent on that. And she got really unnerved and distressed about the mail and sort of frozen about it. And it took her 18 months before she was willing to let me touch it. And then we spent another 2 or 3 years with her having anxiety attacks whenever we had to sit down and work on the mail. She would have to take extra medication. Like it was a whole thing for her. But we did get to the place where she wasn't intimidated by the process anymore. And it just took a lot of work. And we didn't start decluttering after she felt better. We met somewhere in the middle of the road where she was willing, even though she was distressed, for me to start working on it. And I did it slowly and she took extra meds and we worked our way through the process in a way that allowed her to start to get a handle on the mail, and eventually going through it and having completion experiences and having good experiences and having a sense of control over the mail then started to make her feelings be better as well. And so she got the benefit of shifting her emotional state by doing the work. And I find that that is true for lots of people who see the pile in the corner as associated with something big and daunting and emotionally overwhelming, and they can't move on. But moving, people get to a place where it's like, yes, I'm really distressed about this, but I can't take it anymore. And so moving it on, going ahead and working on it, even though it is really overwhelming or distressing, helps you move through your emotional state as well. And so I think it's one of the benefits of being distressed and being overwhelmed and doing it anyway. And it just means you have to go slower at it. Like you can't go at 900 miles an hour because you're also climbing through your emotional responses. And so it just means you have to be more um, kind to yourself and do it in a way that is maybe slower or more careful than you would if there wasn't a lot of emotion attached to what was going on. So thanks for sharing that.
So many people say to us, I was doing great until fill in the blank. Um,
Something happened.
the move, the illness, the death in the family, the
Mm-hmm.
divorce, the job
Mm,
loss, the job change. And you talked about the feeling of control. And
mm.
I think that one of the things that all those major life events have in common is that we lose some of our sense of being in control. We feel powerless. And so that act of getting back into dealing with the clutter can be a little tiny way to take back some power, take back some control, and
That's a very good point.
which I think is important in healing the trauma too.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody has a threshold above which they stop being able to cope. Like we all have a level where we get overwhelmed and can't take it anymore, and it's too much. And I was okay until fill in the blank happens just means you hit the major life event that pushed you into past your ability to cope, past into your level of overwhelm. And that's okay. You can still come back from that. You can still dial that back down to a level of feeling like you're in control again, a level of managing it. And and you get to decide when stepping out of overwhelm is appropriate, and that you want to aim for that goal. And I think particularly when someone dies that's close to you, the parent, the spouse, the kid, um, there's an amount of processing and shutdown that's required just for you to absorb that life experience. But then there is a point where you can, even so, decide that you're ready to come back out of it, and moving some clutter around, making some choices in a very small way is you clawing your way back from being completely shut down. And I think it can be a useful exercise. If nothing else, it gets you in a little bit of motion and gets you in out of being frozen, and maybe helps unclog the emotional works a little bit. It's,
Okay, let me
it's an interesting experience for everybody.
we've got more tittle reports. Paula says, went through all my recipes and was really honest about what I'll never cook again. Got rid
There
of
you
a
go.
got rid of a lot of recipes and took a cookbook to a little free library. Stopped by a few days later and the cookbook was gone. It's happily floating down the river of stuff.
Yay! That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. And, good for you that you were like, yeah, I'm not going to make this again. Or I made it once, or I thought about making it and never mind. I changed my mind. And you're totally entitled to do that. And you thinned it out. And guess what? If you suddenly decide that you need to do something about that, you can go find a recipe again. It isn't hard to get on the internet and find yourself a recipe for something. So good for you that you thinned it out. And I love that you saw that the book went off down the river of stuff to somebody else's house. That's awesome. Good job.
Jane says, related to getting gifts that aren't helpful during a health crisis. After major surgery, I got plants that I didn't have time, capacity, or energy to care for.
Oh my God.
Being single and living alone made this challenging.
Yes.
Although the thoughtfulness was appreciated, creating more for someone recovering from anything with a long recover time doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think people they give plants because they feel like flowers don't last and it's kind of a waste of money, or it's not, like giving you something that's dying. It seems inappropriate. And so I think they want to give living plants, but it's like, yeah, but right now I can barely walk across the room. Like if somebody had given me a plant while I was walking around the house with a hiking stick, it's like, yeah, I can't get from the garage to the bathroom without, like that's the extent of it. After I make that walk, I'm done for the evening. Like I can't do anything else. And so during that time, there was no extra loops or walking around the house to go, water a plant. Like that wasn't going to be possible. Totally get that. And until you have been, my equivalent story is when I fell and landed on my hand and bent my fingers back and had volar fractures on two fingers, meaning that I couldn't use these fingers at all. um, I was so incapacitated by my little fingers being broken that I couldn't do anything at all. It was incredible how not being able to use my right hand shut down my life completely. And you don't realize how, until you've been injured in some way physically, how that prevents you from doing anything. It isn't that you slow down your life, it's that you stop your life for a while your body recovers. And if somebody hasn't ever been ill or injured in that way, they don't always realize that adding the plant to the mix isn't really going to help much. And it's going to be more than you can manage when you have limited resources trying to keep your body working and recovering. So totally get that.
If you really want to give gifts, you have to commit to coming to visit so you can water them and carry off the ones that have died since the last time you visited, right?
Right.
Okay, we better move on.
Mm,
There's all kinds of great conversation in the chat today, and I'd like to share it all, but we don't have time. We gotta keep on rolling. So
okay.
let's move on to our main topic.
Okay.
Do the people with whom you share your space complicate your decluttering process? Living companions with conflicting household habits and routines can sabotage our efforts to get organized. And sometimes even those who live alone aren't free from outside interference with our stuff. Today, we're going to discuss how to work with or around the other people who contribute to clutter in our homes.
Valentine's Day is in a few days. And in honor of the holiday that focuses on relationships plus candy, jewelry, and flowers, we thought we would focus on relationships too, or rather, how those relationships are impacted by their combined clutter. Any relationship's clutter profile can be boiled down to four different types in general terms. I'm an organized person, but the other person is not organized. That's one. The other person is organized or more so, but I'm not, or less so organized. We're both cluttered people in our own special ways. And the mythical profile of we're both organized people. And it's a theoretical concept that both could be organized, but I'm not convinced that it exists in nature. Or at least they don't really follow this podcast. They don't need
Right.
clutter support, so I don't end up interacting with them. There's
They're off cruising the Caribbean or something
right,
instead of
they're off,
listening to us.
enjoying their
Yeah.
life. There's always some mitigating factors that contribute to the level of clutter and thus add to the disagreements in any relationship. Like we have pets in the house, that creates more chaos. We have children, or we have lots of children. We have tenants in the house, like if somebody's renting a room out. We're renovating. We just moved. We have very stressful jobs. We work long hours. We have physical incapacities or illnesses. We have mental issues or illnesses. We just lost a family member. If you start with any of those clutter relationship profiles and then add any of these stressors that I just listed, what happens? You're fighting about clutter all the time. The longer you've been together, the more this argument has been repeated over and over to the point that it's like a tape playing in your head. Someone will say, "Why do you have to keep all this stuff?" Or "This house is a wreck. We've got to clean it up." And the response is to start this tape in your head that's playing, "Leave my stuff alone. Don't touch it. I'll deal with it." And the fight is on. You're back into the argument again. It's really difficult to interrupt this pattern after so many years of having the same fight. No one learns any new lines, and no one is happy after the argument. I'm going to suggest some ways you can deal with your partner from a place of love and respect, and hopefully come to a resolution about the clutter that's a happy compromise for you both. So let's talk more about partners who are not on the same page about clutter. Clutter, or what's clean, is a matter of perception. Everyone has a different perception of what's good enough or clean enough. And in this scenario where you are the more organized one and your partner's the less organized one, you reach your threshold of annoyance way before the other person. So you get annoyed first, always, forever. That means that you're the one who gets bothered first and starts to complain. The problem is that because their tolerance is higher, they're not annoyed about the chaos yet. Instead, they're annoyed that you're annoyed. And in their mind, they're looking around and thinking, geez, what's the problem? It looks okay to me. If you start to fight about it and meet resistance or no help from the other person, it can escalate really quickly because the more organized person comes into the discussion already on heightened alert, and the other person is still in relaxed mode. And this is how a repetitive argument pattern gets started in a relationship and then gets repeated over and over. Because one of you will always get annoyed first and start the argument, while the other one will always be annoyed that you're annoyed. And this situation has no good outcome as it is. We need to communicate in different ways in order to find an equilibrium about the clutter. In general, both partners have to agree that they want a better outcome than has gone before, without the continuous fighting as the only solution. One of our viewers told this story. C says, my husband is in agreement with decluttering things we don't need. We don't want to become our parents, he says. At the same time, when I clear an area such as the entryway, he comes home and drops his shoes, hats, jackets in the space instead of where they go. Isn't that fascinating? Despite the fact that CM is dissatisfied, her
C.
husband, C is, I'm sorry, is dissatisfied. Her husband is partway there. He agrees that decluttering is needed and is willing. This is part one of the process, letting go of things that are no longer needed. What she doesn't like is his participation around maintaining organization, which is a separate step from decluttering. She created a system to organize his jackets and hats, which she doesn't tell us what it is, but we assume she decided a parking space for his jackets and hats, but he doesn't really use that system. So I would ask, have you pointed out the system you built to him? First of all, like, did you tell him this is where his hats and coats are supposed to go? And have you asked him if he feels like he can use it? You may have built a system that works for you, but that doesn't work for him. A compromise may be needed here. So quiz him about it. Can he see himself doing what you designed? If not, does he have an idea of what would work better? Tell him dropping the stuff on the floor in the entryway doesn't work for you as an organizing method. And so you need to reach a compromise together about it. And remember the keys to do this successfully. Talk about a few very concrete examples of things that you want remedied, as opposed to this house is a wreck. That's never going to get you a response that is productive or useful, right? So you want to talk about something very concrete and a very specific example. Do it in a patient, polite, and non-judgmental way. Don't act as if the person has clutter because they have a character flaw. Ask for what you want, but be willing to find a compromise solution that accomplishes the same goal. Have these conversations before you're annoyed so you can be constructive instead of attacking. If you
Or
try to have these conversations when you're angry, you're not going to be able to maintain a level of respect that you need to have a good conclusion here.
I was going to say before you're annoyed or after you've cooled off.
After you got annoyed and calmed down,
Yes.
right? Respect the other person's boundaries. We all get to make decisions about our own stuff. So no more secret removal behind their backs. The whole idea of, when your toddler was a little kid and couldn't say no yet, you were able to declutter their stuff. But you can't really apply that rule once they can say no. And you can't apply that to your spouse or someone else living in the household. And, we're all in charge of our own stuff. And so you can't sneak things away when they're not looking.
Would you like me to read the things you're commenting on for a little
Sure, go
bit to
ahead.
give you a chance to catch
Mm.
your breath and take a sip of water? Um, we'll talk about some more examples from viewers. These are from some past surveys, but comments that we were never able to address in previous shows. So Jennifer says, I try to throw away items, but my husband and kids will take it out of the trash if they see it. Then when they when they decluttered their clothes, I kept some I thought I could use, only to find out they did not fit anyway. So I guess we all have trust issues.
Jennifer's trying to declutter, but it seems like she's decluttering things that are not strictly hers. That means she's giving things away where the original owner isn't participating in the decision. If everyone is taking back things from someone else's donation piles, I think it makes sense to have some agreements among the family. First, I don't declutter your stuff without your permission. That's a good one. Second, I respect your donation decisions over your own things. If I want to keep one of your things that you want to donate, I need to ask you about it and explain why I want to keep it. Anything that's been tagged for donation by its owner needs a collective bargaining discussion for it to go back in the house. Everybody needs to agree, not just the person who wants to pluck it out of the donation pile. That is how you address the trust problems everyone's having. Lastly, if we're all responsible for decluttering our own stuff, then everyone has to participate in the decluttering process, not just Jennifer. She can do her stuff and whatever else the family agrees she can work on, but that leaves other people to manage their own stuff. If you want your things respected, you must also contribute to the work to manage the house where your stuff resides. I think that's super important. You can't um, forbid someone from touching your stuff or ask them not to help you declutter and then not do any decluttering because you are not then working towards a compromise where everyone's comfortable in the house with the level of stuff in it and how it's managed. So we all get autonomy over our things, but that autonomy is not, and therefore I leave chaos everywhere I go and no one can do anything about it. That is not an acceptable position when you share a household with people. So it's all about compromising what is okay to do and make sure that everybody participates around their own things.
Okay, Jennifer, I'm going to Jennifer again because she had a specific thing she wanted us to discuss. And I liked it because I think it might be a good example for a lot of women who struggle to understand some of the particular things their husbands decide to keep. So Jennifer
Mm.
asked us to talk about old paper targets. She says her husband likes to keep them.
Presumably, Jennifer's husband goes to the shooting range, or maybe he practices archery or something, which is why he has old targets. We can guess that he keeps the targets because he wants a souvenir of his good outings, or maybe he wants to be able to track his progress. Even without knowing how many targets he's accumulating, it's easy to imagine the potential problems here. Targets are big pieces of paper, so they'll either amount to a cumbersome stack of large sheets, or they're going to pile up into an even larger stack if they're folded. It's never easy to manage stacks of large pieces of paper or of large folded paper. So let's talk about various solutions that Jennifer might suggest to her husband. The first one that came to mind immediately was, I'd say, take photos of the targets that you are wanting to save instead of bringing the actual paper home. Paper is hanging, the target is hanging up or mounted onto a board or whatever. You can take a picture of it there to see without having to bring the actual paper home. You can also keep only those that reach a certain level, some marker that shows a certain level of successful shooting. So maybe if you reach some numeric cutoff
Right.
where it's really good, a bunch of
Yeah,
bullseyes or something,
right.
right? And then if it doesn't meet that marker, it doesn't get to come home with you. That's one way to filter. Just like a child bringing home their artwork from school every week, you could bring them home and save them in rotation. So when a new one comes home, then an old one gets recycled. You're always looking at the most recent one in the display spot. And how many you display at once is defined by the space that you have to hang them. So maybe one, maybe three, maybe five. I would designate a display space, and what comes home must be in the display area or recycled. I would also ask why he's keeping them. What about keeping them does it for him? Remind him that as long as he's hitting targets, his paper collection will grow into infinity. And you don't have room for that. So a rotating system is the bare minimum to allow them to accumulate in the house. There's got to be things can't just come in forever. So you got to let things come in and have a way to let some of them go out. And so figuring out what way is acceptable for him would be a good discussion to have to sort of dial down the ever growing collection of targets, paper targets.
Okay, next up is Lisa, who asked for our help handling the emotional stress of living with a clutter bug. Lisa says, I have my share of too much stuff, but my husband and daughter are on an extreme level of clutter bugging. No matter how many systems I have implemented, we always fall back into the same old set it down and forget it routine. She goes on to say, it seems that no matter what I try, my family goes behind me to undo all of my work. For example, I hung a mail holder next to the door closest to the mailbox. Instead of using that, my husband has decided all mail needs to be set on the kitchen counter and moved around as space is needed. Since he handles all the bills for the household, ideally I would put a container of some sort on the counter where he has been putting the mail. However, there's so much other stuff everywhere, there's no room for a container.
This is a perfect example of systems designed by the organized person in the house and these systems not working for the other players living there. For example, your husband decided that the mail needs to be horizontal on the kitchen counter, but his system doesn't work for you. And that makes using the kitchen counter impossible. So his systems need compromise as well. The mail holder you devise doesn't work for him, but the spread all over the counter system doesn't work for you. So you guys aren't done negotiating a solution yet because it needs to work for everybody in the house, not just you. And I would, there's hints in what you're saying that make me wonder if your husband is ADHD and whether he's ever been diagnosed as ADHD. If that's true, then you want to work with systems that will support him in that process, coming at it from an ADHD mindset, ADHD brain functioning. Um, the fact that his daughter is just like him, there's a genetic component to that, and so it makes me wonder if you're dealing with some people who are not neurotypical in their processing of stuff, and so they need different um, directions. They need a different focus. in order to help manage the things. But I'm speculating without enough information clearly to make that judgment call. So it was just a question that popped in my mind as I listened to what you said. And the bottom line is still what he wants to do doesn't work for you. What you wanted to do doesn't work for him. So you guys got to have a better conversation about what's going to work and figure out a compromise solution that both of you are willing to go with, that both of you are comfortable living with. Because, yeah,
Because what you're doing
paper
is
all over the
not
kitchen,
working.
it's not
Yeah.
working. And you know that there's more paper coming every day. So that pile's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not going to work long term. So good luck finding a solution there.
Okay, Amanda says, my partner likes to sell things rather than donate. Not a terrible thing to do, but not fast or easy. I wish he had a better way to deal with his office than the current dump and run strategy. He deserves a better organizational system, but I'm not sure what kind would work for him.
This is where quizzing your partner about preferences come in. What has he tried before? Did it work or not? What made it succeed or fail? Was the failed system too complicated or too hidden? Has he ever had a system that helped him feel in control? Does he hate filing in file folders? Would buckets or racks work better? Is he open to support in this area? Meaning, would he let you put things away in generalized parking spaces if you promise not to throw anything out? If you ask for preferences and get a better understanding of what he likes, you can probably help him find a system that he can work with. And I appreciate that you want to be supportive. And so the way that you work that out is you don't take it over for him, and that you very specifically ask for his preferences and his feedback about what would help, what would work, what does he prefer. And he may not know the specific system that he needs, but he may be able to tell you, when I put things in file folders in a file cabinet, it disappears from me. I don't remember it's there. Okay, well, so would it work better if we put it in these open racks, or if we had it on there's questions you can ask about alternatives if what you suggest isn't doesn't make sense to him or doesn't feel like he can work with it. Then go back and forth and talk about how you can modify it until it feels like something he would be comfortable with, and hopefully you can help him out that way.
M has a comment that's really kind of relevant to this one, I think.
Okay.
M says, I knew my husband saved stuff, but was unaware of the extent because his office looked tidy. When he died, I discovered that the locker he had was two 10 by 30 lockers stuffed almost to the ceiling. I wish I had known that so I could have pared down before he died.
Oh my gosh, 10 by 30 is a big storage unit
That's
too.
huge. Yeah.
That's a
And he had
lot of
two.
space.
He had two of them.
Wow,
That's
that's a
that's
lot.
another whole house.
Yeah, and it's nice that he kept it out of your way. It wasn't in your living space. That's a lot of cubic volume of stuff that could not possibly have been in your house. So thank goodness he didn't clutter up your house, but he did leave you a burden that you had to deal with. It must have been really overwhelming when you realized it, and not fast to get out of either. It wasn't like you could empty it in a hurry and get out of paying the rent for the storage unit. I'm sure it was something you had to go through over a long period of time. So, wow. And he was saving it, but why? And what was he saving it for? And so clearly there were some conversations there that might have taken place that might have helped in the interim, but it was what it was for you, and you got left with 20 by 60 worth of storage that you had to empty. And I'm sorry, that must have been a big project.
Um,
Yeah, cautionary tale.
yeah. I want to share another comment. Anya says, Valentine's stuff is hard being single again. Ugh.
I
And
know, right?
I was going to say, Jaime and I don't really celebrate Valentine's Day. I think I've probably said that before. We celebrate Valentine's Day as the eve of the day that all the chocolate goes on sale. So I think, you shift if you shift the emphasis away from the romantic notions and the marketing notions, to the real value of the holiday, which
Which
is
is cheap chocolate.
cheap chocolate on the days that follow.
Oh, that's hilarious. Hey, Anya, you can go shopping for some good chocolate on sale after this.
Connie
That's
says,
hilarious.
my husband's filing system, she puts it in quotation marks, is
Right?
the strata system until the plateau's avalanche.
Oh, yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
that. Like the
that
pile gets
is
taller and taller and taller until it finally tilts over and slides across the room like a, yeah. It does look like an avalanche, doesn't it? Because it's just like, pshh, it slides away. Sorry. Yeah.
okay. Let's go on. Where
We're
was
at Maryland.
Marilyn? Thank you. Marilyn said, my husband is well-meaning, but he does not follow through with any organizational plans. He has orders to fulfill for his work and lets everything go when this happens. It takes days to clean up after, and he misplaces everything. He spends endless amounts of time looking for lost items, and he is not neat about his searches. Ooh, that's the
Hmm.
worst. He does not see the confusion that it creates. He is also becoming somewhat of a hoarder as he gets older. He's afraid to let go of papers, but does not organize them so he can retrieve them if he needs them. I am not overly neat, but I can locate my materials. I have a method of organization and have places for everything. I take the time to remove clutter as it is difficult for me to work in a disorganized space. He has to stay out of my areas, and I do not try to organize his. He does not like my methods.
One thing that caught my eye in what you wrote was he does not see the confusion that it creates.
Yeah.
That tells me that you see it and it bothers you, but he doesn't see it. It might be a good time to share how his methods are impacting you and to ask for some compromises around it. He doesn't have to use your methods of organizing. That's not what I'm suggesting. Instead, you can talk about what methods he thinks would work for him to at least dial back the impact he's having in your shared spaces. He can decide on organizing techniques, and you can agree to support him by helping him do his organizing methods. From what you said, addressing the paper in some way would be useful. Maybe he just has a few smaller boxes to put all the papers in just so they're contained. There's no need to sort it heavily. A box per year. Since I bet there's a few years of paper in there, containing the year's paperwork is at least a step to managing it. Plus, separating earlier year's papers from current paper will create some old piles that you then might negotiate about sorting and filtering out unneeded paper. If you can help him box up all the loose paper, then any new paper is current and he can start this year's box of paper going forward. And putting paper in a box is something that you can help to do. I'm sure this will require some negotiation, but it will be worth the effort. Flying, shifting piles of paper are always very visually distracting and they make everything else look much, much worse. So, just gathering those papers by year in boxes will help the visual overwhelm that's happening. Good luck on this one. I think that he could probably use the support of a professional in there. It might be worth talking to him about a professional organizer coming to support support him in getting control over it.
Yeah. We talked to so many people who struggle with paper, and this statement, he is afraid to let go of papers, but does not organize them so he can retrieve them if he needs them. And
Hmm.
I think it bears repeating what we said 1,000 times before, which is you can keep all the paper that ever comes into your house, but if you can't find something when you need it, you are just filling up your space with junk. It's not,
Yeah.
a paper that is not organized to the point where you can find anything in it is not it's not saved. It's just
Or useful.
heaped up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's
just a
not
big
useful at
mess.
all. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, maybe there's a starting point for a conversation for Marilyn in that to say, well, and also I think addressing the issue of how he makes things worse when he goes searching for something and creates
Yeah,
more
yeah.
confusion. She
And makes
definitely
it stirs the pot, I'm sure.
she definitely needs to state her needs clearly and make clear that okay, it's fine for you to manage that, manage your collection this way. But here's what I need. I
Mm-hmm.
need for it not to make everything worse when you go looking for something.
Yeah. And it's not going to over time it's just going to get worse, right? Like if he's keeping all the paper and he just keeps adding and adding, then you're going to be in that situation where the cubic volume of the space that he's staying is working or interacting, saving stuff is just going to get fuller and fuller and fuller. And it's not an infinite box. He's going to reach critical mass at some point. And so talking about the inevitable complete filling of the room is not an unreasonable starting point. Like, what are you going to do when this room fills up? Then what's going to happen? Like, there's no place else to go. We have to figure out a way to deal with and manage and filter this paper. And if you don't want to do it, then let me do some preliminary work and then you can come in later. You can go behind me. Like, I won't throw anything out, whatever, negotiate around how you can participate and support. But the idea that you're just going to let it go forever while the room fills up to incapacity is not reasonable and not easy to live with. And so it's appropriate for you to ask for compromise and intervention here.
Okay, a couple more comments. Let's see. M says, wonderful, Ed, wonderful view of Valentine's Day. I know the chocolate factory I will be visiting. Um, and in reaction to Connie's description of her husband's stack plateaus, Amanda says, suggested the term crapalanche for when the plateaus fall over. We may need to add that one to the Clutter
Sure.
Fairy
I know,
vocabulary.
right? To the Cliffordisms, Crapalanche. That's great.
Crapalanche.
Y'all are so clever. You're always coming up with words for the how to describe the chaos. I love it. The
And
Crapalanche.
and Connie added, not only need to have conversation with DH, but must sit myself down and talk seriously to myself.
Oh,
That's
fair
a
point.
that is a and what a great starting point for
Yes. For talking with him.
an open and honest conversation. Like,
Yes.
here's what I have realized about myself. That's always a good place to start. It's, I
Yeah.
have this problem.
Here's
Let's
how
talk.
I'm
Yeah,
contributing.
let's talk about what we could, how you could help support me in dealing with my issue. And then while we're on the subject,
Turnabout's fair play. Let's also talk about you, right? But I think that's a very excellent point for everybody. I mean, you're basically saying, I know I'm contributing, and there's ways that I'm contributing, and so the idea that we would just talk about the spouse isn't that's not appropriate. It's reasonable that everybody has to own their part and everybody has to work on a plan, and that you guys can collectively talk about how each of you is going to like you can both talk about yours and you can both talk about his and come up with compromises that work for everybody. I think that's great.
oh,
Good insight.
Amanda says she may have gotten Crapalanche from Dana K. White. So let's
Oh,
give credit where credit is due.
okay. All right.
Okay, let's see. Do we have time for one more? I think we do.
Sure. We're
Um,
Kathy.
Kathy says, my husband teases me in my decluttering journey. For example, as I pull the books out yet again to purge, but he does encourage me as I let things go and keeps the areas that have been decluttered organized.
I'm sorry that he's teasing you. That's too bad. But at least he keeps the areas organized that you've already worked on. There's nothing wrong with circling back through an area to thin it out again. You're just peeling the onion one layer at a time. And that is a fine way to approach your clutter reduction. So laugh with him about it and keep doing the methods that actually work for you. Don't surrender your methods just because he's giving you a hard time. And yeah, I'm looking at the books again, whatever. Laugh and
Yeah,
move on, right?
yeah. Maureen says, I'm laughing out loud at this mail discussion as I have something I put many pieces on in our dining room I call the bill chair. My, my husband says that is not a defined piece of furniture. He does
It
not,
is a new
however,
name.
offer to take over this task. Yes, I am pretty sure that if you walk into, your high-end furniture store and ask them to show you the bill chairs,
They won't have any.
they may look at you kind of funny. Well, the bill chair is obviously the one that has the arms. You know how some dining sets have the ones on the ends have the arms and the rest have no arms? I
Yeah,
would
yeah,
think the
yeah.
bill chair, you'd want a chair with arms.
Right?
I don't
Well,
know.
and I suspect that it's probably, it's an armchair that then creates a well, and it's a flat surface, right? It's a flat
Yes.
surface that stuff's getting stacked on, and there's a back of the chair and the sides of the chair, and so the stuff doesn't fall over as easily. Yeah, that only works if you don't have pets in the house because then they just
Oh yeah.
climb up on it and kick it all off. But I think, it does reflect an issue if you have created a new piece of furniture in order to deal with your bills, then I think you are reflecting the fact that you need a system for managing the mail and the bills, and you've adopted the chair just because it was easy and available, but perhaps you want to reclaim the chair to be a chair again and create another system for the bills instead.
Jane asked, is the book The Clutter Connection: How Your Personality Type Determines Why You Organize the Way You Do by Cassandra Arson on your list of books to discuss at some point? I don't think it is, so I'll make a
But
note of
we should
that.
add it,
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll put that on the list. And she mentioned, I think you've said Decluttering at the Speed of Life by Dana K. White is on the list. Yes. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it definitely is. Naomi says, who is this Bill who is so important that a chair has to be reserved for him?
Oh, that's so funny. That is a
Okay.
new the bill chair, but I've seen it before. I have seen chairs that have been surrendered to their horizontal surface to hold stuff instead of actually being chairs, 100%.
Okay, let's get back to, we have a couple more. We can cover a couple more, I think.
Yeah.
Lisa says, as empty nesters, my husband and I have been working diligently to declutter every area in our home and our 21-acre property.
Mm.
After we declutter an area, we work together to organize the items we need to keep. Sometimes he struggles with the sunk costs, but not as much as he previously did. I hope it becomes easier for my husband to let go of things without thinking about the money items cost. I also hope he has an easier time recognizing what supports his and our real lives as opposed to unrealistic fantasies. I
And the fact that you guys are working on that right now is how he is getting better and is going to get better around how he feels about it. He's going to have that experience of shedding and letting go and not regretting afterwards. And we all hate buying mistakes. We all hate feeling like we bought something and it didn't work out, or we don't need it, or it wasn't right somehow and there's no way to get the money back, and that's a bummer. But it is life, and there's no one that always makes perfect decisions about what they buy. Everybody has sunk costs that are the money's just gone. So
and
living that with that and letting it go.
I would ask Lisa if she's talked about that topic specifically, if she has described sunk cost and the all the things we've said before about you're not getting that back. You're just not getting that back, and you need to recognize, first let go of the idea that you're ever getting that money back. Now, what is the value of this thing to us in our
Mhm.
present life?
and
Um,
and for the things that you declutter, the value is in the empty space, in the value is in the not having it anymore and not having to deal with it anymore,
yeah.
getting it out of there
Okay,
for sure.
one more. Um,
And don't forget the tittle.
no, I won't. We're still okay for time because we
Okay.
started a little late. Um, Ginger says, My he hel sorry, my husband helps me let go of broken stuff I think we should repair. I thought that was an interesting turnabout because it's
Mm,
so often the husband who has the mountains of stuff that are going
That
to get
needs
fixed
repair.
one day. Ginger says he convinces me technology has changed and those items are new and improved and or more energy efficient.
Mm.
He tells me something was good while it lasted, but its time has passed. Let it go. I'm more likely the one to second guess my decision and retrieve things from the declutter pile. My husband is more likely to not want things put away out of sight. I
Well,
think it's
and go
great to
ahead.
recognize, well, it's great insight into your divergent styles, your
Yeah,
divergent
yeah, yeah.
attitudes.
And he is, if he's the one that out of sight is out of mind, then that means that the level of things that he wants to keep needs to be much, much lower. If they all have to be not put away, then that volume of things needs to be much, much lower. And if you're the person that tries to retrieve things from the declutter pile, I would ask you, as you guys have been working on decluttering, have you regretted anything that left? Have you thought about and thought, oh, I really wish I hadn't given up the fill in the blank? Are you haunted by any of those decisions? If you can just recognize that 95% of the time you give things away and you never think about them again, then maybe you can trust your decision a little bit more and not worry about it. If it ends, you make a decision, it ends up in the declutter pile, and you realize even if it goes away and you regret it, you still can function, you still can solve a problem, you can still cope, even if that one thing that goes out that shouldn't have gone out or that you wish you had the chance to have it back. It's just one thing, and you can still cope with whatever's going on in your household. And so giving yourself the grace to recognize I've let all these things go and I've never regretted it, or I've only regretted it once. Therefore, when you go to a pile and you're like, oh, should I take it back? Should I take it back? You can tell yourself, no, I don't need to take it back because I've never been sorry about the things that have left, and coach yourself through that to interrupt retrieving it back. Because if you bring it back, it's just going to have to be decluttered again later. It's just going to go through another decision tree where you touch it and have to give it out again later. So anytime you can prevent, you made a decision, it went to the declutter pile, and you don't shop it back if you can at all help it. Because then you're just telling yourself, I'm going to have to do all this again for this particular item. And who wants to do that?
Right. Rowan added, I believe every person who declutters has this one regret. Why didn't I do this sooner?
Yes, ma'am. That is a true statement. 100%.
Okay,
I agree.
Maureen asked us, can you remind us the title of the book for upcoming discussion? Yes, for our March 4th episode, we're going to be talking about Fumio Sasaki's Goodbye Things, the New Japanese Minimalism. And I'm sorry that I have not yet managed to do finish one project I'm working on, which is a book of, I mean, a page on the website that will be a list of books that we're considering for future episodes with links to where you can buy them. But yeah, we're going to talk about Goodbye Things on March 4th. 4th,
Mm.
right? Yeah.
And I got my copy as a Kindle on the iPhone. I'm reading it on the iPhone. So
Nice.
it's super easy to get a copy of it. It's out
Okay,
there.
let's talk about next week.
Okay.
We are going to be back next Tuesday, February 18th at the usual time. The desire to open our homes to family and friends is a fundamental human need, but clutter-impaired people often let shame, fear of judgment, and the physical condition of their homes stand in the way of the fun and fulfillment of entertaining. We haven't talked about this in a long time, but next week we're going to talk about what guests need from us and suggest ways to start entertaining even if your space is still a work in progress. So
Perfect.
join us on February 18th for Excavate the Welcome Mat, Declutter and Organize for Entertaining.
Good title. That's a good title.
Sort of assuming your welcome mat hasn't been seen in a while.
Right?
Gayle, why don't you give us the title?
Okay, this week's title is Get Him or Her on Board. This week's assignment is to engage another member of your family or household in an organizing task or project. As you discuss the project area in question, Try your best to set aside judgment, blame, and any history the project may have. Focus instead on things on which you both agree and on constructive ways to move forward. And here are a few strategies to explore. Start the conversation. Talk about your stuff, their stuff, and shared stuff, how you use your home, and your shared roles in caring for the space. It's always a good place to start. Listen as actively as you speak. Learn as much as you can so you'll be able to accommodate one another's different tastes, habits, and organizing styles. Communicate your needs. Clearly outline your intentions and expectations about organizing to the family member or housemate in question. And also be prepared to compromise. Negotiate specific solutions to address the most troubling areas, the things that bother each of you the most. And don't be super married to your first organizing solution that you find
forward.
works the best for you. You want to pick the thing that both of you can accept and work with. That's our ultimate goal. So have your conversations, see what you can find out, and come back and tell us about it next week.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Happy to see you guys. I hope you have a great Valentine's, and we will be back to hear how your successful chocolate shopping score was the day after. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.